So, what I'm going to talk about mostly is pretty random stuff that I've learned and doing those four startups over 20 years. And it's something that nobody taught me how to do it. So, I'm going to put this on the slides to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that I've learned. So, hopefully, that something in this slide will kind of click with you. Okay. So first question I ask is, why do you want to do a startup, right? And most people say a lot of different answers, like, I want to make money off of this. I want to be a million. I want to be next Elon Musk or whatever it may be. I have some of the people say, oh, I have this idea. I want to make it into reality. That's why I want to do the startup. Some of the people will say, I want to make things better than what it is today. Company XYZ does this way, and I think I can do much better for cheaper or whatever it may be, right? A lot of the people who succeeded will say, I want to change the world. I want to change things that's always been done into something completely new, completely different, right? In medical field, which biomedical area, which I was in my last startup, it's about saving lives. And that's a very powerful message. And the successful startups that I've seen often have their own pain point that they brought it out. So I was at a competition for startups, and this guy wheeled out in a wheelchair and started pitching his company. He said, I was at war in Afghanistan, and I'm a paraplegic, and I came home and I couldn't find this medical device that met my needs, so I started a company. He won the competition, obviously, because he had a good story to tell, but it's also his pain point that he was solving. So the most successful reason why you want to do a startup is you have to understand your customer's pain point. So what are they, what are they experiencing that I want to solve so they want to buy my product, right? So this is something that is so simple, but a lot of the startup CEOs misunderstand, which is, what are you selling? And I say 70% says, I sell technology. I have a XYZ product with specs of, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I want to sell this. This is what we're selling. I say, actually, it's not. And they say that, then we have this product that does this, and that, and that, and this, that. I'm going, still not there. What you're selling is solution. It doesn't matter what's behind the solution, but the solution has to click with your customers to be able to sell it to your customer. And this is one of the hardest things to go from technology to a solution where people go, oh, I want that, right? All right. So who's your customer? Again, a lot of these things you already probably know, right? So I'm just hoping you just pick up one or two things out of that. Who's your customer? It's a B2B, which means you have to solve problems. You have to do competitive analysis. You have to do market segmentation. And you have to, understand the vertical markets and so on and so on. In B2C, it's a little bit different what you have to do. You're talking about demographics. You're talking about want versus needs, right? Value proposition and psychology of marketing, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. A lot of companies say, we're going to do both. We're going to do B2B and then we're going to do B2C. We're going to start as B2C, B2B. Doing both is not a very good idea, initially anyways. So choose one area where you think you're going to do well, and that's where you want to go with. Okay? And then this is really important as well. Protect your idea. How do you protect your idea? Patent is one way of doing it. And if you look at logos of a lot of these companies, you'll see things like R and TM. R is a registered trademark. TM is a trademark. So the difference is that you register your trademark with the USPTO as an official trademark. You don't really have to do that. If you start using your trademark, it gives you a right of use based upon when you started using your trademark. But it's very important that you check to make sure no one else has a trademark before you get started out. And there are other things, copyrights and, all these things you have to think about. and different kind of things that you can think about when you're looking at different companies, how they protect their brand, so to speak, and so on. So the thing to do is check with the USPTO. You want to protect your idea as much as possible. Okay. One thing I say is that I know getting a patent is very expensive. It's upwards of $10,000 or more. But you can do a provisional patent, which could be something that you write a page or two. It only costs $150. I don't know what the latest cost is, and file it. Then you have 1 year to actually file the patent. So you have 1 year to test your idea, see if this is something that you really want to spend the money patenting. And the reason why you want to patent is like a lot of people say, oh, patent, it doesn't matter. Big company, they have all this money and do this and that. But when you get into patent dispute, having a patent and not having a patent is a huge difference on how much you're going to spend money and effort to, at least win. Worst case scenario, right? You cross patent and then go walk away. That's what you hope for. All right. So those of you who don't know what the history of Silicon Valley is, I'm going to go real quick on how this all came about. You go back to 1950s. There was a company called Schottky Electronics who made transistors. And from there, what happened was the CEO of Schottky was a very kind of not a very good manager. He was a good engineer, but not a good manager. So what happened was that 8 people fled over to Fairchild, who was actually a camera maker, and say, hey, we want to start a semiconductor company here. And they said, okay, we'll do that. You have to come up with money to start this thing on your own. So the treacherous 8, that they called them, went to somebody to get money to start the company, and that became Intel in 1961. Not became, but they actually left Fairchild and started Intel. So this is why we're called Silicon Valley, is because Intel and all these semiconductors that went on. Why is Silicon Valley so different? First of all, I think there are 3 major reasons why. Number one, it's a counterculture culture, so to speak. During the 60s, there were a lot of demonstrations at UC Berkeley and in areas in San Francisco and so on. So the whole culture around here is to think outside the box. Don't just believe what everybody says. You think on your own, that will do the way you want to do it. Also, that all came to be what we call fail early, fail fast, fail often kind of thing, where high risk, high reward is the way to go. So this whole thing, culture-wise, is very unique to here. A lot of other places tried to duplicate it. It never really worked out. The other thing is Educational Institute, right? Of course, you go to Boston, there's many, many amazing universities that are top notch, for example. But you look at the statistics of universities, how many founders went to which universities? You look at number 1 is Stanford, number 2 is Berkeley, which is right around here. So the education drives, culture drives education drives the innovativeness and the entrepreneurship that is so well known in this area. And lastly, diversity. So a little story behind this. So my friend of mine went to Iowa to do a startup because he heard that Iowa has great engineering school over there, and then he can go there and hire engineers for half the price of Silicon Valley. So he went all the way over there and started a company, came back three years later, and folded the company, came back. I said, why'd you come back? He said, here was my problem. When I walked out at 6:00, the office was empty, because in Iowa, it's God, family, and then work, right? In that order. So why is diversity important? So being a, 1.5 generation myself, we had to work harder because we didn't understand language and so on. So we're putting in 15, 16-hour days. It's like, no big deal, done it before. So having diversity, at least one of the founders is foreign born here in Silicon Valley, in every company, pretty much. So understanding the culture and using that as a baseline, it becomes a lot easier to do a startup here than anywhere else. So it's a very unique ecosystem. Right. So forming a company, I'm not going to go over this much, but there are many different ways to go. Sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, and then you have the, like LLP, so on and so on. Then there you have a S corp, which is a state level company that you can register to the state where you are. And then after that will be C corp, which is, nationally known. And a lot of the C corps are, corporation in a Delaware, and there's a reason for that. And lastly, this is what a lot of the companies overlook, is if you're doing something good for the world, but you don't want to be bound to the C corp where you are absolutely the highest priority is maximize the return of your investors, then you can consider B Corp, where if you have a culture and the mission that is doing good for the world, that maximum profitation of the shareholders could take a secondary role. So a lot of the companies, Etsy, for example, if you know Etsy is a B Corp. So something to think about. Where to incorporate, right? So Delaware is, most of the company go there for a reason. Because if you go to like California here, the Delaware favors corporation when it comes to corporate laws, whereas in California, it favors the workers. So if you're starting a company, a lot of the companies will go with Delaware because it is better to do it that way for the company rather than doing it in California or somewhere else. So when you start a company, you don't have money. How do you pay your people, right? And that's an employee stock agreement. So instead of giving them money, you give them stock, right? So less money, less salary, and then you give them stock. So the stock is the currency you can use to get your employees or other people to work for you. Okay, typical rule of thumb of a stock agreement, all right? Typically, when you start a company or C corp, you usually do about 10 million common shares authorized. Out of that, typical split between founders, ISO, which is an stock option, incentive stock option, and undistributed is about 40 to 50% founders, 10, 20% ISO, and then the rest of them are not initially distributed. That's for the common stock. So percentage of what typically person gets of this 10 million, common share, CEO, CO, 5, 10%, 2 to 5%, VP level, 1 to 2%, et cetera, et cetera. Senior engineers get down to 1/3 to, 2/3 of a percent, and so on and so on. So typically, what you do is you do a 4-year vesting period, and often delay vesting 3 to 6 months because you want to kind of work, check out the person you're hiring to make sure before you get what we call, cliff, where you get 3 to 6 months from now, you go, okay, you're good. Here's the first 3 to 6 months worth of stock. And then after that, you vest monthly and then or quarterly or annually, right? So you think, people go, oh, hey, stock free, here, take it. Typically, you have to purchase the stock when you do a stock purchase stock agreement. So what that means is that a lot of the company, when they start out, they'll do 0.0000 cents per share. That means if you're getting 1 million shares, you only pay like, $10 or $100 or whatever, right? But you do have to purchase the stock at a agreed price before you go ahead and just be able to accumulate it to your own, right? All right. So here's something I've learned that from a company I used to work for, Connor Peripherals, and they were at the time fastest to Fortune 500 ever in the company. Typically, a company will design something, and they will produce something, and they will sell something. And this is what happens 80% of the time. They already have, companies will come to me and say, hey, we have this product. Would you like to sell for us or market for us, and so on and so on. This is wrong. I'm telling you right now, right? You should be doing sell first, have a customer already, then design, then produce. Okay? Because without this, you have no guarantee of success of the company. because you don't know who your customer is. You don't know what the customer is going to buy or whatever. So I don't have time to tell you about the Connor story, but ask me later if you want to talk about it. All right. Typically, what is the sales versus marketing? A lot of the company come to me and say, can you do marketing for us? And what they mean is, can you do sales for us, right? So the big difference is, I'm not going to go over the definition of what marketing is. This is the definition, if you want to look at it. Marketing is the strategy part of it, and execution of that strategy is the sales responsibility. Some people are good at one and the other. I'm a marketer. I'm not a salesperson. You don't want me as a salesperson. I'm horrible at it. So it's rare to find somebody who can do both. But if you can find somebody who can do one or the other, that's where you want to go. The other thing that I didn't understand when I was doing my company was, who is my competition, right? So if you're selling athletic shoes, for example, and you're an X brand, everybody thinks, oh, my competition is Y brand, right? Everybody thinks, oh, it's just a company they're competing with me. Actually, it's not. Sometimes that's what we call direct competition. We have other competition, indirect competition. Maybe they don't like to wear sports athletic shoes. Maybe they like boots. Maybe they like dress shoes, right? These are indirect competition because one person can only wear one pair of shoes at a time, right? So you have to think this way. Or completely differently could be somebody likes barefoot. They don't like shoes. They don't wear it. One good example of this is that, there were like 2-3 companies I mentored. They were a logistics company that did an app for a tablet, right? And they said, oh, we can track this and track that and track all of this. And I said, who's your competition? And they listed like 2-3 other companies doing the same kind of app. And I said, no, your competition is a trucking company using paper and pencil. That's what they're doing. I mean, not all of them now, but I mean, in those days, that's what they did. Your competition is now, those are paper and pencil, where you have to go and show why you're better than those paper and pencil. Otherwise, they're going to stick to something cheap and it works for them right now, right? So understanding your competition is huge, huge thing when you're starting a company. All right. So this is what I tell everybody. KYC everybody knows what KYC is, like know your customer, right? It's very simple term everybody uses because it's very, very important. However, I added another letter, KYPC. You have to understand who's your paying customer is. So know your paying customer. Why is this important? This is important because oftentimes, especially in government, when you go and pitch your product to the government, people are going to use it, have nothing to do with who's people are going to pay for it. So no understanding. That's why you get a complaint from people who are in the government, state, regional government, who's saying, our software sucks. But, nothing they can do about it because the person who signed it is probably the CFO who understands what they need for their organization. And that's the company that pitched to the CFO who got to sign off on that. Not all the time, but this is typically what happens. So you have to know your paying customer, okay? All right, pricing misconception. This is another thing that I get from startups all the time. They go, oh, we're cheaper than XYZ. People are going to buy it. No. Competing through pricing is not a good strategy because the price depends on the value. And this is why we call value proposition is very important because if you're saving somebody life, they're not going to nickel and dime you to say, I want $2 less for that. They're going to say, I'll pay you anything to save my life, right? So understanding what your value proposition should be the main reason why that drives your pricing thing. For example, reason I like this strategy is that, let's say you have $1 million in revenue per year. If you're charging $1 a month, you need 10,000 users to get $120,000 a year in revenue. But if you have something that's so high value that you can charge $5,000 a month, you only need 10 users to get to, say, $600,000 a year in revenue. So more revenue, less users, more per month. And that's why the pricing misconception is the reason you can't make, money off this. So I want to talk about psychology market. I'm sure a lot of you have taken psychology courses. I did as an engineer, which is kind of weird, but I took a lot of courses in psychology when I was in school. The first thing to understand is empathy. What is empathy, right? A lot of people think having sympathy is the reason why you want to understand your customers. No, you have to understand your customers through empathy, which is being in their shoes and try to understand what their needs are and why they want to buy your product, right? But the secondary thing is, if you ever took a Maslow, if you heard of a Maslow in your psychology courses, Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? You have the physiological need all the way to the self-awareness need at the top. The higher you go into this pyramid is about want. Lower you go in the pyramid, it's about needs. So you have to understand what are you appealing to, right? And you know why a lot of these insurance company gets you on the fear, right? Fear of your life, fear of your, happiness or whatever it may be. They're driving this all the way down to the psychological needs of the human beings, as per Maslow. That's the reason why they use fear as their sales tactics or marketing tactics, okay? So look through your customer's eyes, differentiate between their wants and needs, provide a solution that meets the lowest need. Okay. When you meet somebody for the first time, they go, hey, what do you do, right? This is where elevator pitch comes in. Elevator pitch literally means as you're going down an elevator in a building from top to bottom, somebody asks you, what do you do? You have to answer, right? So how do you refine your elevator pitch? This is, I found very helpful. The most important first step in storytelling. So storytelling to me is more important than marketing or anything else that you're talking about. You have to have a good story to tell. Otherwise, you would not be recognized by other people, okay? First thing you need in an elevator pitch is a hook, okay? So hook doesn't have to be anything to do with what you do, per se. What it is something simple a 9-year-old can understand, to understand, wanting to understand more of what you're doing, right? So, for example, a good hook for me was we save 20 million lives a year from people who have certain disease. What? So what you want to get out of this is what do you mean? How do you do that? I'd like to see more. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? That's the hook. That's the successful hook. And that's the baseline from all your pitch you do from here on to the end. This is the baseline where you have to have a good established hook. Then you can talk about the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, and how, and why, and all that stuff, right? And then you do what you have to provide from the elevator pitch is what at the end is that problem solution, value proposition, benefit statements, differentiation, all of these things in your after your elevator statement. Elevator pitch, because that's when you want to draw people in, right? So the last thing you want to do before you leave the person is call to action. LinkedIn, linking in a LinkedIn or a business card or whatever the method you use, because you want to keep their attention of what you talked about, and if your hook was good enough, you get people to stay and talk to you. Okay. So storytelling evolves into elevator pitch. Your pitch deck, then your investors, your ad and PR, and your customers. Okay, so keep that in mind. I have to go kind of fast here because I'm running a little behind. History of venture capital. This is I get talk about. The father of venture capital is Arthur Rock, who was an investment banker in New York who funded the Fairchild move as well as Intel. So this is where the venture capital came in. So when you look seeking money, what do you need? So 100K to a million typically is what the angels provide. And these small VCs 1 to 10 million, large VC 10 to 50, and then 50 plus is investment bankers typically. That's how it goes, right? This is important because I didn't know this before. And I was doing pitches about, well, how are we going to make money on these things? And a lot of VCs just, didn't even listen to me. So how does the VC work, right? This is what they do. They get money from these organizations. Like CalPERS is number one in providing VC fund, providing fund for the VCs. CalPERS is the California Workers, retirement fund, right? They're number one, $27 billion 2 years ago, I think this was. Harvard schools, they're invested into VC, $8 billion. And then insurance, and then trust, right? 1.6 million. And then that fundraising is between 6 months to a year for the VC. And what they do, whether they distribute the money to startup companies or not, they make 2% fee a year, right? So what that means is that they don't have to do anything. They make 2%. Now, they keep the 2%, but it means that next time they go for fundraising, they're not going to go with them, right? But they can do that. So they're not in a hurry to make money or invest in companies. They only invest in companies they really want to. And the fund will go between 5 and 10 years. And this is why you hear a lot of the companies, when you go to VCs, they go, okay, can we get exit in 5 years, right? Because their fund runs out. Their fund runs to the end. When their fund ends, they have to return to their investors within a few months after the fund ends. And a really good return is about 25% return, right? So what the VCs do is that they know there's 90% of the companies they invest in will fail within 2 years, that one company will make up for the rest of the failure and return 25% annual return to the investors. So this is how VCs work. So when you do your financial statement and all these things, you have to understand how this works to fit the VC's mind so they understand, and then you can go and have a better success with talking to VCs. Okay? There are other sources where you can get money. You don't have to go to VCs, right? One of them is government grants. I personally got a DoD grant for the phase one of SBIR, and that was about $250,000. And the second phase would have been $2 million. So you can get money. It is a grant, a lot of work involved, and you have to know what you're doing. But you can get up to $2.25 million for your company to produce product, and government doesn't want that money back unless you fraud them, right? So that's a lot of money you can use to get to the product development if you need to. The other ones are things like accelerators and incubators and so on and so on. They provide money for you. Y Combinator, everybody knows that. They'll put in, I think, about $250,000 for you if you're chosen, and then they take some equity. And then you have accelerators like MedTech Innovators, who you go into a contest, and if you win it, you win $2 million. And then second and third places, they win, various amounts and so on and so on. And then other thing is you go into Kickstarter's, Indiegogo, or Fundable and get money through that, early money. If you have a hardware product or software product that for the consumer level, it's one way to go and check to see if your product is viable in the market. Okay? So what you need? You need the elevator pitch to get one-on-one meeting with VCs. From there, you need about 10 to 15 slides, right? And then if you passes it, it goes to the full partners meeting, and full partners meeting, they will choose one or two companies to come and do a full partner meeting presentation, which is usually Monday mornings. And you need about 40 slides, full presentation over there to get there. So priorities. In startup world, revenue is more important than profit. And why is that? Because your valuation of your company solely is based upon your revenue. And VCs, when they exit, it's all about the valuation of the company. That's why they make their money back. So they emphasize revenue, profit, don't care, right? Growth of the company is better than stability. They want these companies to go full out as much as possible, and that's what they do, okay? So when you have a revenue like this, which is what we call hockey stick, because it looks like a hockey stick, this is the kind of revenue that they're looking for in 5 years when they exit. So you have to provide that in the minds of the VC for them to understand, oh yeah, this is a company I may be interested in, right? Move fast and pivot. 90% of the companies I dealt with, when they went, above it, the final product they sold to their customers, including 2 of my companies, is not the product you started out with. So you want to go as fast as you can, but when you hit the block, you need to pivot and go another direction as quick as possible. All right. So key things I learned. These are a few things that I learned that I want to pass to you. All right. Reality check. All right. 90% of the company will fail in 2 years. I'll have to understand that. Okay. Why do they fail? Because they don't have market needs. Number one reason. Number two is run out of cash. Right? Between those 2 reasons, we're looking at 70% of the company. So if you can get over those 2 obstacles, your chances go up dramatically of being successful. Okay. Again, valuation. I'm not going to go over this too much, and this is what the VC purchase pricing is going to be when you get valuated by the VC on the valuate like a Series A, for example. All right, 10 things I learned. Find a partner who shares your passion for your vision and complements your skills. Never have 4 MBA guys starting a company. That's really a bad idea. Or 5 engineers starting a company. That's a bad idea too. Okay. 2, don't build a better product. Instead, make a solution. Okay. To customers who will buy. 3, rethink your strategy if you can't find an eager customers to use your product. If somebody doesn't say, oh my God, I'm going to pay you today for this product that you have or this solution you have, and I want it later, I don't care how long I have to wait. That's the kind of thing you need to make sure that you're successful. Okay. 4, don't follow the design, produce, sell approach. Use the sell, design, produce approach. 5, investor looking for team that can execute more than product, idea, market, etc., etc. If you have a team that is solid that can execute, they're more likely to invest in you than not. 6, cash is king, right? Number 2 reason why startups fail, you don't have cash, right? So conserve as much as possible, but be creative and move fast, right? Always be ready to pivot. The original idea is rarely the best. I'm telling you right now. I've had so many companies pivoted and succeeded. So be ready to pivot. Don't say, oh, this is my idea. I'm going to keep until the end, until we die. No, don't do that. Change your product, solution, whatever you need for the market. Okay? 8, networking is crucial. When I was starting my last company, I was literally going to 6 meetings a week or 6 events a week because I was networking. And this is how you get your feedback from people and say, oh, great, and get your elevator pitch done right, because that's going to be what's going to get you in there first, and then get people interested in what you do. Now, believe in yourself, your vision, and your partners, because it isn't easy to recover if you lose faith. But you also have to know when to quit, right? Because it doesn't always work out. Understand you got to do 10 startups to get one to successful, to be honest, by number-wise, right? Lastly, people are the most critical assets and treat them as such, right? But also know when to let them go. This is very important to know who's contributing and who's not contributing to make a decision. Not an easy decision, I know, as a CEO or CXO, but you got to make these decisions. And that's it.